So, dear viewer, I have a bit of a story. Try to ignore my voice right now, I have a head cold. So, I've always kind of disliked how games are getting more and more expensive lately. I just don't like the fact it's going to cost nearly an entire day's paycheck to buy one video game. And I found out my hatred for rising video game prices with Doom: The Dark Ages. Now, I'm a bit of a Doom fan. I like the old games. I love Doom 2016. Doom Eternal's alright, even if it changed the boomer shooter industry, and I'd argue some very flawed ways. I love when every single video game now has enemies that have weak points I need to shoot. It's so epic. And then the game's DLCs came out, and they were hot dog shit. I'm pretty sure the first DLC was made by Under the Mayo and his cult, because it was just like, let's take the somewhat challenging nature of the final levels and then just say fuck it and crank it to 10. I love fighting the Doom Hunter when he's buffed with a spirit and I'm in water that won't let me jump. It's so sick. This is such a fun and fair challenge. Wow, so awesome. And the second DLC's final boss fight had us fighting Satan himself, and the boss fight was just a glorified Marauder fight. And to top it all off, it ends with Doom Guy dying. Cool. So when I heard they made a new Doom game, I thought maybe they've learned from their mistakes. They're even adding parrying, which I wonder where they took that inspiration from. So I spent $80 fucking on that game, played it, and was severely disappointed. 90% of the enemies are rehashes of the old one, but now they have something in them you can parry. The few new original enemies don't really feel unique enough to be cool. The game's combat can take 900 years because all the enemies are bullet sponges. The game is, while graphically impressive, I am glad I bought it for my PlayStation, because I know if I tried running this on my computer, it would fucking self-destruct. And there's basically no side modes. There's not even a multiplayer deathmatch like Doom Eternal, a horde mode. It's just, there's the base game and a survival mode. Cool. Doom 2016 has the base campaign, the arcade mode, multiplayer, and its deathmatch, and it has snap map for custom maps. Doom Eternal has the base game, the horde mode, the battle mode, the 2 DLCs. Doom: The Dark Ages has the campaign and a survival mode. $80. And because of that, I've basically just been sticking to indie games. And I've had way more fun playing indie games. And I've tried thinking, why exactly are indie games so much fun? Now, obviously, there's 9 million reasons I can list, but if you've read the title, there's one in particular I want to talk about. A lot of indie games don't have to concern themselves with the goal of trying to be realistic, which I feel like is the big reason video games cost as much as they do, and is a trend I fucking hate. I am tired of video games being so hard to run that you need to buy brand new hardware every year because every game studio decides we need to see every individual hair on a woman's head. I am tired of video games taking up hundreds of gigabytes on my computer, and I maybe will play them a few times in my spare time off work. And I feel like a lot of people mainly ignore the cost part of this stuff, because without getting political, people in my generation cannot afford to move out because of how expensive housing and apartments are. They can't afford to live on their own because groceries will cost 3 paychecks. They can't afford to live on their own because if they decide to drive out anywhere, it's going to cost them to get like $9 per gallon of gas. I'm proud to be an American. The gas is damn near $9 a gallon. And I feel like that's the main issue people just don't talk about, is that a lot of people, mainly in my age group and generation, can't afford to keep up with the hardware. We can't afford to buy more storage for our computer so we can play these games. And so, it finally clicked, after a while, why I've been enjoying these indie games. They look purposely shitty. Now, I know that might sound mean to say shitty, but I mean that in a good way. They purposely look old school. They purposely look like they were made in the early 2000s or 90s. And Twitter, being the miserable fucking cesspit it is basically calling this shit retro slop, which, to that one person who made that tweet saying friend slop, I genuinely want to strangle you because you unironically changed the internet's vocabulary in the worst way possible. I hope that you never get a good night's sleep knowing what you've done to any and all forms of discussion involved. But to me, I view it less as nostalgia or a cool art style, but more as a way to actually allow these games to do what they want. They don't have to worry about overly realistic animations of characters doing this. Just have a character do it. They don't need to worry about modeling creatures for an hour. They can just come up with a character model in maybe a day if the game looks low quality enough. And I want to go ahead and list off some games that I feel show how even with abysmally dogshit graphics, you can have some of the best games ever made. And I feel like a good way to show that is the first ever video game that made my brain question whether or not graphics mattered, back when I was a teenager. I had heard about a game, I heard it through Under the Mayo. You gotta understand, I was a fan of him at the time, but at the time I didn't realize how fucking cringe he was. And it was a little game called DUSK is a retro shooter that is designed and handcrafted to look like something right out of the 90s. Developed by David Szymanski and published by New Blood, which, can I just state that I really am having to hold back from just listing off every New Blood game in this video. Every single one of their games looks unique, retro, and just like also the CEO is really, really cool as a person. I think the only other CEO that like I think is actually good for the company they work for is like the CEO of Xbox. But anyway, DUSK is set in a town called Dusk. I know, quite unique. The lore of the game is not really stated, although from things like Steam forums and just environmental storytelling, we can pick up on this type of story. We play as a man named Dusk Dude, who lived in the town of Dusk with his family. But eventually a cult showed up, and probably out of fear, he tried to run away with his family so the cult wouldn't be able to go ahead and try to kidnap them or force them to join. But anybody who didn't join was killed, including Dusk Dude's family. Eventually he was kidnapped and had 2 spikes in his back and was ordered by the leader of the cult to be killed. However, he, like a badass, somehow managed to get the hooks in his back out and begin using them as his weapon. And as we progress through the game, we find out just how powerful this cult is and the true inner workings of what they're worshipping. We find out that the military was involved in what they were worshipping and seemingly helped them almost. And the military seemed to also try to contain all of this, but failed miserably. They harnessed power from some sort of energy, and with this power were able to create eldritch horrors. Most of these eldritch horrors you end up fighting. And from there, that's about the only plot you really need. There's a twist at the very end, but I don't want to spoil that twist. But Dusk is the game that made me finally realize when I was much younger that graphics mean nothing to a video game. Because the gameplay in Dusk is so good. You see, Dusk is all about movement and trying to hit your targets as you're moving. The game itself also makes moving as fast as you see in the footage easier, by basically allowing automatic bunny hopping. Let me explain. Bunny hopping usually refers to in a video game when you time your jumps correct and can basically move at the speed of a jet. And what DUSK does is it has a setting which is by default turned on that basically just allows you to hold down spacebar and you can bunny hop to your heart's content. And the arenas are very often designed for you to take advantage of this. They are spacious and wide and open, and in the event that a level is much more tighter or claustrophobic, usually it compensates for there being lesser enemies or slower but tankier enemies. And believe me when I say you have plenty of weapons at your disposal to get rid of the creatures and cultists you fight. By the way, I'm beginning to realize this, but the more and more I look at the cultists, the more and more they look a little bit like something else. Or I could be wrong, and they're actually meant to represent these guys, who are actually, like, chill. You have the very sickles that you had inside of your back at the beginning of the game. You have pistols and shotguns, which you can dual wield. You have a double barrel, an assault rifle, a hunting rifle, a mortar. We're getting into the weirder weapons now. You have the mortar, the riveter, a crossbow that shoots energy crossbows, and these crossbows, when shot, can kick you back. And if you time it right, you can use it to basically glide. You also have a cigar which you can smoke to slowly heal 1 health point. And then the most infamous weapon, as in I've seen this appear in other video games, such as OVERKILL and Cultic, is the bar of soap, which is a little item you can find and throw at enemies, and it deals, in the game's code, 1 billion damage. And speaking of throwing objects, that's another thing about this game that I really like, is that you could just throw stuff at enemies if you don't have anything else. You can throw buzzsaws, rocks, barrels. DUSK Dude can basically pick up anything like he's Gordon Freeman and also has the throwing force of the gravity gun. And I feel like this adds a whole other layer to the combat of the game, because not only is utilizing your weapons effectively nice, but your own wits of studying your surroundings can also help you. Something I kind of like in the game is that very often you can find explosive barrels, but usually they're kind of out of the way. So it's kind of encouraged for you to grab the explosive barrel and throw it at the enemies, then shoot it. Whereas most action video games just say there's an explosive barrel here, try to lead the enemy to it. DUSK is a game that encourages you to get your hands dirty and bloody when it comes to fighting the enemies. And I feel like very often a lot of video games don't really trust the player to do that, if that makes sense. And look, there's nothing wrong with a game holding your hand a bit when it comes to the combat, but there is a point, and a lot of games have reached that point. And so I enjoy playing games that go ahead and show you a level or a fight and just say, solve it in whatever way you can. I feel like a good example of that in recent memory is probably Pigface. But it feels good to have a game that just trusts you to figure out what to do and trusts you to find out how to solve this arena, how to go ahead and reach the boss. And this level of trust also extends into the secrets, which are very well hidden, at least for a tiny brain individual like me. DUSK doesn't give you a map, and the game doesn't directly have some text saying, go do blank. The game kind of expects you to do what DUSK Dude is doing. Kill anything that moves. And the things that move in this game, their design is just amazing. What I really like about DUSK is that it has the balls to have some more interesting and unique enemy types than you would see in most boomer shooters. Most boomer shooters just kind of have the same few types of enemies. Some dude that charges at you, another dude that charges at you but he's tankier, people that shoot you, a dude that explodes, a dude that can shoot you from afar, maybe an enemy that can heal other enemies or boost them. DUSK, on the other hand, has enemies like the Wendigo, which is, in my opinion, the most unique enemy in probably any boomer shooter I think I've ever played. I think the only other exception might be, like, the Ghost from Cultic. The Wendigo's whole thing is that you can't see it, at least at first. However, when it gets near you, your flashlight begins to flicker, and you can, if you look closely, see bloody footprints on the ground. If you shoot where the blueprints are, you'll see the Wendigo. Another enemy I really like is the possessed scarecrows. They, at first, will just usually sit idle and look creepy. However, as you progress through many levels, very often, scarecrows that are sitting still will then come to life. And to make them even more badass, they have a goddamn double barrel. You have the Grand Wizards, which, you know, that's not helping with their looks. You have the Cowgirl, and unlike most games made by New Blood, there are surprisingly not Rule 34 of her. You have the Bone Ball, which is a ball that shoots skulls everywhere and turns any arena it's in into basically a bullet hell. You have the cart dog, which is an enemy, and then probably my favorite one design-wise, the priestess. Dusk is chock full of unique enemy designs, and I love every single one of them. And I haven't even gotten into the boss fights, which are just insanely fun. My favorite boss still has got to be the Guardian, who you can kill by telefragging, which is just like, oh my god, any game that lets you do that immediately gets a 10 out of 10 in my book. Can you tell I'm a fan of Quake? Speaking of that, Dusk also features a deathmatch mode which can be played, although it doesn't have the biggest fan base. I'd argue it's probably about as dead as Proteus's deathmatch mode. But despite the retro look of the game, the levels and story it conveys, I feel, are honestly just as good as the gameplay. It is a story of a man seeking vengeance for a family he lost to a cult, and as we play, we find out this cult has a lot of things behind its curtains. From government funding to eldritch horrors to other dimensions, it is just an amazing story. And the levels, too, just are beautiful in their themes and the way they're set up. Episode 1 is primarily in the countryside, ending more in the city and with the laboratory environment. Then from there, in Episode 2, we enter more military and army-ran facilities, and eventually begin finding ourselves in much more eldritch, ancient places as we go on. And then Episode 3 goes into 11, and we are just now inside of other dimensions. And this entire story is told with some dialogue from the cult leader, but most of it really is just environmental storytelling. For example, when we see that the army basically rebuilt the Tower of Babylon, the game doesn't really comment on it. You just see that they built a facility this high up, and you can tell it's ran by the army because of 1, the fact that you fight mad scientists inside of it, and 2, when first arriving, they offer you a hunting rifle positioned near a dead soldier. This one corpse tells a million words. And speaking of the game not really commenting on anything, a lot of the ways that you're able to get through levels can be done without doing it the way it's quote-unquote intended. Yeah, no, I know, this is a really smooth transition. I forgot to mention this, so I'm cramming it in now. One of my favorite examples is a level in the first episode where you need to acquire a yellow key in order to open the door to a church. However, you could just take a box that's in the back of the church, put it up against the window, and break through the window, and then skip basically half the level. The game doesn't punish you, it doesn't put up an invisible wall, it isn't forcing you to try to take one path. And that is really rare to find a lot in modern video games. There are just so many video games now where all they do is expect you to go down one tiny path, and it can get annoying. It feels amazing when a game gives you 3 different routes, but 2 of them aren't directly stated to you. And I've kind of reached the end of my list of main points I want to talk about, so here's just a ramble of some things I really like about Dusk. I really like the power-ups that this game gives you. In the game, there are 2 distinct power-ups. One that, when acquired, will give you a very fast fire rate and can be stacked, basically turning your pistols into a minigun if you grab like 3.
I'm not full auto, it's not full auto.
That's not full auto?
This is. That's full auto.
Damn, bro. Okay.
The other power-up, and probably my favorite, is the red syringe, which basically turns the game into super hot, where things only move when you move. If you don't move, everything is still. But if you do move, everything's moving. It is such a great power-up to combine with the double barrel and the hunting rifle to line up perfectly placed shots. It is just so fun. The game has a survival mode, which I really like. I didn't feel the need to mention it because it's just kind of there if you want to play it and have more fun. The game has workshop support on the PC, so you can go ahead and play custom maps, although there's not a whole bunch. But to try to make this segment just a little bit shorter, Dusk was the first game that made me realize I want games to look like games. And it has amazing combat, an amazing soundtrack, it has amazing enemies, level design, environmental storytelling, and fun little side modes. But if Dusk is still too slow-paced for you, let me go ahead and present you with what may or may not be the fastest-paced shooter I've ever played. Turbo Overkill has us playing as John Turbo. That's not a joke, that is the character's name. His name is literally Johnny Turbo.
Johnny, hey, where's the fire and brimstone, man? We need that virus purged now!
Johnny is a quote-unquote street cleaner, or basically a paid killer, and he's being paid to go ahead and hunt down a rogue AI in the city of Paradise called Sin. This AI has basically went ahead and overtaken the city by augmenting people who use it and turning them into essentially its minions. However, as Johnny's... I can't keep saying Johnny because it is literally the meme of the protagonist is John title here. As we play, we see that dealing with this AI is not a simple mission, with the situation getting pretty bad by the final levels of the game. But the story itself, if it wasn't apparent by the fact the character is literally named John Turbo, is more or less not at all important. The game is simply about being a fast-paced shooter, which gives you lots of guns, and upgrades and augments, in order to go ahead and take down the hordes of Sin. If it wasn't apparent by the gameplay, the game is in the future, and thus augments and robotic limbs are a thing. And your main weapon of choice, that is heavily encouraged to be used, is your chainsaw leg. In the past, Johnny had, like, half of his body blown off.
You must have known you'd end up on the other side of the barrel at some point, Johnny. Oh, pucker up and kiss this for me, Johnny!
And so because of this, he has received augments, and the chainsaw leg is the most fun and crazy one, because it basically encourages you to literally run into the hordes. And through upgrades, you can make it deal more damage, allow yourself to move faster, and just overall, the upgrades and little matches and loadouts you can build are just insanely fun. One of my favorite loadouts is what I like to call the fucking Chainsaw Man loadout. Basically, near the end of the game, you can get an augment that gives you 2 chainsaw legs, doubling your damage. And you also, in the last half of the game, get a weapon that gives you 2 chainsaws for hands. And so what I like to do is to equip both, and then just become a walking fucking buzzsaw. And speaking of weapons, this game gives you plenty. You have your shotgun, which can be charged up to do an electrical wave, which will stun most enemies, with the exception of one enemy specifically designed to counter that. You have the minigun, which also doubles as a flamethrower, the double barrel, which can also become a grenade launcher. I think you're kind of getting the point with these guns. Most of the weapons in this game usually have some sort of alternative function that is not at all what you would expect out of most games. One of my favorite weapons in the game has got to be the telefrag sniper rifle. Now, like, I've already explained what bunny hopping is, but if you don't know what telefragging means, that right there is what it means. I'm not explaining it in depth. The whole idea with this weapon is, at the cost of some ammo and only being able to do it to smaller enemies, you can telefrag an enemy and basically teleport around the arena with a sniper rifle. It is such an amazing weapon, and I love the idea behind it. Taking a classic bit of Quake Deathmatch and just... oh my god, why can't more people make really cool weapon designs? The only other game that has really unique weapons is like Overkill, dude. What the fuck? But I think another good example of just how interesting the weapons are, but also how useful they are, is the starting dual pistols. You see, most shooters, including DUSK, even though I gave it praise, has an issue where as you get better and better weapons, more often than not, what you started with kind of just becomes irrelevant. Where in Turbo Overkill, with the upgrade system, this thing becomes very much useful, with it having, by default, a auto-lock feature, which allows you to automatically select up to 3 to 5 targets and shoot them, requiring no aiming, just the holding of a button. And then later in the game, you can acquire an upgrade that gives it a power mode, where if you deal enough damage with it, it will basically one-tap most large enemies, helping to keep your very, very starting weapon still relevant all the way up to the final level. And so, unlike most boomer shooters, I actually found myself using pretty much all the weapons. And also, speaking of the weapons, if you aren't too familiar with some of them, the game will very much make you familiar with them. Starting from episode 2 and onward, you will enter corruption zones, where during these fights, you can only use a set or select amount of weapons. For example, you can only use your sniper rifle, you can only use shotgun shells, you can only use bullets. But to make up for the fact you can only use those certain weapons, you are given infinite ammo. And I honestly found this to be a really interesting and cool way to teach the player how to use new weapons that they may have not used before, because you're literally forcing them to. And while I mentioned the story is a weaker point of Turbo Overkill, it actually was able to keep me hooked the whole time. We basically witness as Sin turns out to be much stronger than what we thought, and witness it more or less try to destroy paradise and, to an extent, mankind. And as we journey, we deal with mercenaries paid to try to finish what job we couldn't. We have to deal with the army, who we end up helping. One of the mercenaries goes mad, and we have to stop him before he basically rivals the power of Sin itself. And despite taking place in basically one city, each episode feels unique with its take of the apocalypse. Episode 1 gives me the vibe of you're kind of in the alleyways in a city where everything is terrible. Like, off in the background, the city that we aren't accessing is full of crime and murder and drug deals, but we're busy dealing with AI-controlled thugs. Then in episode 2, Sin begins to take over, and we can see the city is just in ruin, fleshy tendrils going out far beyond the damn thing's atmosphere. The city is on fire, everything is falling apart, and we gotta get out. And episode 3 is just the city in its worst, with the army coming in to try to fix everything, but it's kinda not working. And thus, they have us go ahead and help them. I feel like a lot of boomer shooters have an issue where, as you play the game, you kinda just feel like you're in it for the ride, like there's not really a story being progressed. And I think a good example of that would be like Quake, where it's like, yeah, I'm collecting artifacts to stop a bad guy, but there's like nothing in between doing that. Where in this game, I felt like as I was progressing through the levels, I was actually progressing the story, that I was actually having some sort of impact on Sin and the war going on. Turbo Overkill is probably the fastest paced boomer shooter I've ever played. It's all about being fast, shooting people with crazy fucking guns, and the enemies themselves are equally as crazy. All of them being these disgusting mixes of flesh, metal, and AI. But let's go ahead and assume that maybe Turbo Overkill is just too fast-paced for you. Which, that's fair, some of these levels give me a migraine sometimes. Well, in that case, I have a bit of a slower-paced, much more horror-themed game. And it is, unironically, my favorite game ever published by New Blood.
Run, run, don't shrink and cower, join us at the witching hour, skip and sing, thrashing lighters, run the streets of endless night, dance beneath the crooked moon, and rising rapture hand in hand, from pale decay and empty gloom, we'll comfort you. May our light embrace you too, and pierce the edge of midnight soon, the wakers blaze an ashen gloom.
He said you come here. He told me the boys see you.
Gloomwood is one of, if not my favorite game by New Blood, even more than Overkill. While games like Overkill and DUSK are kind of what they're known for, I'd argue Gloomwood is probably the best work to come out of this company. Although I can't lie, Blood West, that one's really fucking good. In Gloomwood, we play as the Doctor, which, by the way, can I just say that, like, in-game, although we only see the Doctor's hands and his drawings of himself, the art of him for, like, New Blood's events, not much is known about him, but near the final level that's currently available, it's kind of hinted he had some sort of involvement in this plague that infests the city of Gloomwood. The game starts out with us being kidnapped by a huntsman, a servant to the villain, the Countess, and we're told that we're going to be brought to her for some reason. The game is in the Victorian era, so there is some technology and firearms do exist, but good luck trying to find a lot of ammo. Well, at least if you're playing on the harder difficulties. If you play on the easier difficulties, you're going to be literally drowning in spare bullets. Gloomwood is an immersive sim, basically a game where your actions will 99% of the time cause some sort of response. Leave a door open when you were sneaking through an area, an enemy will spot it and comment that they didn't leave that door open. Return to an older area after you've already killed everything in there. Well, now there's a new enemy there that's feasting upon the remains of what's left. It is a game that trusts you to find your way around. Your map doesn't show you where you are, it just shows you the layout of the city. Which, I really like that, by the way. It reminds me a lot of the map in Lost in Vivo, but even less forgiving. The game trusts you, and it's good to play a game that trusts you. You know, now that I say that, I'm beginning to realize I've said that twice in this video, and they're both about New Blood games. I think I'm noticing a pattern with their games here. And in the game, although combat is fun as hell and kind of a good idea to do if you're getting through a crowded area, it's not always a good idea. Large hordes of enemies can easily kill you on the medium tier difficulty, and even on easy you can get killed pretty fast if you're not careful. And so thus, stealth is encouraged. But if there's always one issue I've had with immersive sims, Exhibit A, Dishonored, it's kinda hard to know when you're hidden. However, Gloomwood counters this by giving you a ring. This ring will shine if you're in light, or if you're doing something that gets you noticed. So if you're running around, the ring is shining to tell you, the player, hey, you're running around, enemies can see you in the dark because of how much noise you're making. Where if the ring is pitch black or barely even lit, that means enemies can't see you unless you're literally breathing down their neck. And speaking of the enemies to me are probably my favorite part of Gloomwood. Like, seriously, as somebody who draws up video game ideas that I'll randomly have, the enemy designs in this game are genuinely so unique. The huntsmen are people who were once hunters of the city of Gloomwood, now turned into the servants of the Countess. They're hunched over, their eyes glow to tell you with their states of noticing you. They breathe heavy. They are the most common enemy in the game, and are relatively easy. Until you get into Hightown, which is not their territory anymore. There you'll meet the constables, which are everything about the huntsmen, but upgraded. They're faster, they're stronger, they're more deadly, their eyes don't glow, so you've got to be a bit more careful about knowing what they're doing or listen to their dialogue a bit more. And I think probably the part that makes the constables the most dangerous to deal with is that when you kill a huntsman, they just let out a gasp and die. They're so sick and weak that dying just makes them breathe hard. Where the constables, you stab them in the back and,
Come out into the open, one. Take the gallows for you.
But along with these enemies, there's other enemies that I love in this game, such as the Crowmen, which are presumably ex-huntsmen, now mutated by the plague even more, but the research journal entry for them also theorizes that their clothes are actually stolen from dead huntsmen, and that they aren't. It's weird. The game is unfortunately not finished, and so a lot of the lore is currently not known. Although, there's enough hints to kinda put something together. There's hints that the shopkeeper and the guy who gives you the ring and frees you in the beginning of the game may be a bit more paranormal than he comes off. The way that the plague spread is not exactly known, but there's multiple hints that all kind of point in different directions. From the feasting of infected individuals' bodies, to the sewers being contaminated with the infection, to just people spreading it by going near other people. And as of now, that's probably my favorite part of Gloomwood's story, and I kinda hope it stays that way, that we don't really know why things are the way they are. And since we're talking about the enemies, how could I forget the ever so infamous Goat Men? The Goat Men are this game's version of a mini-boss, and were specifically designed to counter the whole rule that just stabbing someone in the back instantly kills them. It's a behemoth. It towers over you, and it is just a terrifying and deadly creature, with only 2 of them being in the game, and one of them is an entirely optional encounter. Well, actually no, both encounters are optional if you know how to sneak around and get through the area that you can meet the first one. Which, once again, this is something I love about Gloomwood. Now you're probably thinking, well, if I can skip a bunch of encounters, that kind of doesn't sound that good. I can just kind of skip everything the game has. Well, this is where the shopkeep comes in. Throughout the nooks and crannies of the city, you can find spare coins, spare jewelry, maybe if you're lucky, a gold bar or an artifact if you get deep down enough. And you can sell this for money to then acquire more things. I think the best example of this is the upgraded pistol that you can buy before entering Hightown. You see, in Hightown, some of the constables have sniper rifles. So you could go ahead and once you return from the hive, you can then purchase a upgraded pistol that is more steady and has a scope. Now, as of recording, this weapon is all in one bundle, but Dylan Rogers, the dev of the game, has teased that these parts that you find actually can be detached and then reattached to make whatever combo of upgrades you want. But Aiden, you said that the constables have sniper rifles. Why can't you just steal their sniper rifles? Well, Gloomwood does something I really like and that I find really unique, and I'm surprised more games haven't done this with their enemies. The enemies of Gloomwood are, although human, mutated. Their limbs are longer, their bodies are bulkier, and they're taller. And because of this, normal guns don't work with them because it's too tiny. So most of these enemies have specially made guns to fit their basically 6-foot build with a lot of muscle. And seeing as we are playing as a doctor, not an athlete, yeah, no, we cannot use their guns. But where would all these enemies go if they didn't have good settings and levels to be in? As someone with multiple replays under my belt, I always find new things in each run, and that is, I think, the reason a lot of people don't understand that Gloomwood updates take a long time to come out, because these levels are just so well designed. Nearly every nook and cranny is hiding something for you to find, whether it's spare coins, a note to give more lore, maybe even a spare enemy, and that enemy's placement tells you some info. For example, in Hightown, near the entrance of the level, you can find a sewer, and in the sewer is one of the crow mutants. This alone tells you that the crows, which earlier we saw live in the sewers, have spread all the way to Hightown, which, you know, is the district with the constables, the most heavily armed and well-funded faction so far in the game. Not even they can stop the plague and crows from spreading, which, to be fair, looking at the constables' faces, I'd think they also have the plague. Now, with all this said, Gloomwood would be a generic immersive sim. Just, you have guns and you can sell stuff for money, but Gloomwood introduces a mechanic which I think is amazing and helps to encourage you to explore. That being the research system. You see, we're playing as a doctor, and we're trying to, while we're here, make a cure for this plague. And in order to understand these creatures, we have to study their corpses. So, with the use of the bone saw, you can go ahead and cut corpses into giblets, and then put them in your medical table, study them, melt them down, and then when you've studied enough of these giblets, you can then come up with a serum. And not only do you get the serum, but you get a passive bonus. For example, if you study the Crowman to its entirety, you gain a speed boost when you're not holding out a gun. And the serums themselves are a game changer. However, these serums need ingredients, and throughout every level, you can usually find some sort of ingredient hidden somewhere. But should you get all the ingredients and melt another giblet, you go ahead and create a serum. And each serum does something unique and different that helps with the gameplay. First off, every serum will make you friendly with whatever creature it is. You make a huntsman serum and then inject yourself with it. Well, for a good moment in time, the doctor, according to the huntsman, just looks like a huntsman. and they'll just say, oh, are you a new recruit or something? Use the crow serum near crows, and the crows will just keep minding their business and not think anything of you. But not only do you basically camouflage into a horde, you also get some sort of bonus usually. For example, the Huntsman serum, when you stand still with it on, will allow you to see mist where enemies are nearby, letting you basically see enemies through walls. The Bat Barber serum, which is based off this enemy, I didn't think to mention them earlier, I love their design though. This serum will allow you to basically jump the height of 2 floors, and when using it in the underport level, you can basically speedrun that thing in less than 10 minutes. The Crow serum lets you heal when you hurt enemies, but you'd have to be in melee range, and if you're in melee range, then you'd probably take damage. Trust me, the camouflage effect that this thing has well makes up for in that level. The Goatman serum allows you to become a Goatman and then just shred enemies to bits.
It's too hard to see out of this damn thing. What's all this? Blast that thing to smithereens.
And there'll be more serums planned as the game goes on for other enemies that are already in the game, and enemies that are yet to be added. There's going to be a serum for the fish dog enemy, which allows you to basically just breathe underwater until it goes out. And a constable serum, and I love Dylan Rogers, oh my god. Dylan Rogers has hinted that although you can disguise yourself as a cop, act a bit too suspicious and don't follow the law to a T, they will see through your disguise right then and there. Gloomwood is such an amazing game, and I hope that me having a semi-large YouTube audience can go ahead and bring more people into the game, because this game deserves more love and attention. It has a wonderful art style, a wonderful soundtrack, amazing enemy designs, an interesting plot, an amazing gameplay loop, and some truly horrific and disturbing moments throughout the game. But if you're looking for a game that's really disturbing and really horrific, then I know another game. A game, just like Gloomwood, basically made by one guy. And that game would be... Labyrinth of the Demon King takes place during the fall of the Dharma, a part of history when the Hold. Yeah, really smart move, Aiden. Cover a game that's like 90% Japanese, you know, that's really clever. The game takes place during a point in time when it's believed the Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings were declining and were being less and less believed in, leading to basically moral chaos. We play as the foot soldier to a lord in the army. And what happened was our lord was led into an ambush by a powerful demon, and everyone except us died. Our own lord, who was leading us into this battle, perished in order to protect us. And now we are entering the Labyrinth of the Demon King, Oh my god, that's the title. What? We are now entering there to try to avenge him. And this game truly disturbs me in ways that I just cannot explain. From simple things like finding a monk's helmet inside of an abandoned prison cell, to a note mentioning that the king in this castle was living with a little boy, to our sword being half broken, and then near the end, the final boss mentions that half broken sword. There's some dark implications going on. However, it's never stated what these things are, and I kind of like that. It's like in Silent Hill, when notes will say messed up things, but you're the one who's able to tell what it's trying to convey. The place that the Demon King resides in is... well, the best way I can describe the look of this labyrinth is if in Silent Hill you entered another world segment, and then you just never left, and the rest of the game was stuck there. I feel like looking at the walls in this place, I'm gonna develop tinnitus. Even the outdoor areas feel scary because it's foggy. The outside world is unable to be seen. It feels like you're basically trapped in this little bubble that is the Demon King's Labyrinth. And while here, we encounter various demons, and presumably the souls of the damned wandering the halls. And the enemies in this game are interesting. From rat people, to these floating heads that'll explode when you kill them, to these disgusting frog-like creatures that are unironically a real creature in Japanese mythology that licks bathroom floors. And then, of course, my least favorite enemy, these little lantern-wielding bastards who, like, I swear, you hit the block button and they just pretend it don't exist. Like, I just wanna fuck.
She maced Windu! Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba!
And this game has about everything you could think of in a survival horror game. You got resource management. You have to go ahead and think about every hallway and what could reside there. You have a safe room, you have save points, and you even have a chaser enemy. Early on in the game, you have to mess with a Buddha statue. And when doing so, an enemy called the Neurobotiki, I think I'm pronouncing that right. My Caucasian is really showing in this video right now. Which is just like the bathroom-licking creature, a real-life creature in Japanese mythology, about how if you mess with a Buddha statue or don't treat it properly, this charred black corpse with dangling eyeballs will come after you. Now, to be quite honest, most depictions of him, he looks goofy, but in-game... he is genuinely terrifying, and he introduces a new mechanic called Rot. You see, this creature and a few other enemies, some only exclusive to New Game Plus, will give you the Rot effect. And the whole idea behind this effect is it initially does nothing, but if it reaches 100, you'll die. And you have to basically try to avoid this creature, but this isn't made easy because of the fact that this place is made up of hallways. So to counter this, you have an item, Spiritual Essence, which just lets you put down these candles that will slowly remove your rot. It is a very unique mechanic, and I kind of wish there were more enemies that inflicted rot. The only enemies is the Neurobotike, the floating heads, and a version of the bathroom licking thing you can find in New Game Plus. Now, with all the horrors that you find here, you'd probably think you're alone and by yourself, but there is a few characters who kind of give us a little bit of lore. There is a Catwoman creature who is the game's merchant and will take any money that you have and give you items in return. She also owns a tea house, which is this game's safe house. You have her husband, he looks like a walking scab, and he is a blacksmith who will upgrade your items for Shirikodama, which is, in Japanese folklore, a mystical... It is essentially a orb with mythical powers inside of your anus. And you can find this stuff just lying around. So it's kind of implied that you're giving him literal feces, basically, to upgrade your weapon. It is, like, so disgusting, but with how gross this game is, it fits. You have a lady who is essentially the bride of the Labyrinth of the Demon King, and she is stuck here and basically just tries to encourage you to, yeah, go ahead and try to kill the Demon King, then we can all be free. And then also you can find a monk who tells you that he's just kind of here and can't remember why, and sells you talisman. Talisman are unique abilities you can find on pieces of paper that will go ahead and do something when activated. It could be something like shooting lightning at your enemy, healing you. There's even one that when you use it, it just teleports you back to the safe house. Although you can find a good few talismen in some nooks and crannies, some of the really good ones are only sold by the monk. Now, talismen aren't your only weapon. As a matter of fact, they're more of a secondary. Your main weapon will be actual weapons. The remains of weapons from other soldiers and people who lived here. From hammers, to arrows, to swords, to little brass knuckles, to even guns, you have plenty of options as weapons. However, these guns are not your traditional guns. They shoot lead balls. I mean, we're not in the modern age here. And melee weapons, although good and useful, require you getting up close and personal with the enemies. And this is where you have to learn about the game's blocking and dodging mechanic. Blocking will leave an enemy stunned, you getting blocked will leave you stunned. You can kick enemies to get rid of their block, but enemies can do the same to you. Heavy attacks will go through a block, but require a lot of stamina, and light attacks won't, but you can do them a lot more faster, and they don't eat away at your stamina. I also really like how this game's stamina system works. It doesn't go down when you run, it only goes down when you're attacking. And the only way for it to go up is to just sit and wait. However, if you sprint, you just don't have your stamina go up. It doesn't go down either, it just doesn't move. I really like this mechanic because it has you have these moments where you'll be in the middle of a fight, realize you have like 3 stamina left, and have to last minute decide, do I run or possibly die? And then probably my other favorite part of the game is that respawning has a canonical reason for existing. You see, we're told throughout the game different parts of hell. And near the end of the game, we're told about a version of hell where when you die, you will hear somebody yell, "Revive, revive," and then come back from the dead, and you are stuck in a loop of fighting forever. Well, in game, when you die, that is exactly what happens. This means that we are essentially in hell and are stuck here. But maybe if we defeat the Demon King, we'll be able to go ahead and escape? I mean, it's what the lady earlier theorized. Well, upon defeating the king, you are given the option to do New Game Plus. And then when returning to the lady where you originally met her, she says, "Oh, you've come back. There is no escaping the Labyrinth." And then from here, the game just becomes a New Game Plus cycle of just repeating the game over and over, seeing how powerful you can become. It takes about 2 New Game Plus runs to finally find all the hidden content. The first one is where you encounter more of the new weaponry and encounter some of the new enemy types. And the second one is where you can encounter the new optional boss, along with the best gun in the entire game, which is able to shred some of the earlier bosses. And to me, I find this gameplay loop fun, seeing how fast you can get through the labyrinth, seeing how much you can get through without dying, or how much you can get through without taking damage. Upgrading your armor to where it's basically made you invulnerable, and upgrading your weapons to where you can just shred enemies is just so much fun. However, what I think might be the best part of the game over its combat, enemy design, its story, and its graphics would probably be its soundtrack. As someone who likes to make weird ambient albums, the ambience of this game is just amazing. There is 99 different tracks through this entire game. Some of these tracks literally dedicated to like one specific room in one of the specific towers of the labyrinth. Labyrinth the Demon King is probably my favorite indie horror game in recent memory, alongside games like Signalis, and another one that I'll mention in just a second. Labyrinth the Demon King to me is the best kind of horror. The disgusting horror. Horror of disgusting monsters, getting your weapons and items from disgusting things and places, and just overall a story about disgusting people. Now, my original goal with this video was to make it much longer. However, I actually want to try to stick to some sort of monthly upload schedule, so I'm going to go ahead and just before I mention the last game, run through real quick some games that I feel, even with retro graphics, are amazing and fun as hell. No, I Am Not a Human is a game about playing in a post-apocalyptic world where people who are disguising as people, called visitors, are going up to people's doors and basically causing the end of the world. The signs to recognize visitors are hard to notice and sometimes can just be something that can be explained by the person or what they've been through. The visitors themselves' origins are extremely mysterious. It's theorized they might be the dead coming back. There's people who you encounter who are actually visitors but don't even know it. And the game overall is just about witnessing the world die and fall apart each night and each day. Every character has an interesting story and background, even if they themselves are a visitor, and it is just interesting to watch the world fall apart from the inside of a house. Cultic is a boomer shooter where you play as a private detective trying to investigate the goings-on of a cult, and as you play, you discover that this cult is extremely powerful and very well armed. The game wears its inspirations on its sleeve, and is just overall an extremely well-made game made by literally one guy, from everything to the soundtrack, to the designs of the levels, to the sound effects. Lethal Company, haha I know, funny game, is a game that I think really emphasizes how bad graphics basically mean nothing. The game itself is a wonderfully fun gameplay loop of being workers for an unknown company in space, trying to deliver junk to an unknown manager, while avoiding dangers from some sort of war in the past and other aliens. It is made by a single furry, and managed to outsell Call of Duty. It's crazy how when people make games that are purposely retro that they can make in a bit of a shorter time than most other games, they can sell it for cheaper and well make up for it by the game actually being fun, because they didn't spend all their money on graphics. Yeah baby, feed me that $80 slop baby, it's so fucking good. Darkwood is a game made by 3 people with an upcoming sequel that is being made by a different dev team, so depending on your stance on how sequels work, maybe don't get the sequel. You play as an unknown character who, through bits of backstory and secrets, we can find out was actually a soldier at one point. You are stuck in the woods of Poland, with an unknown anomaly going on, causing trees to rapidly grow and essentially encase people into the woods. Whatever's been causing the trees to rapidly grow has also been creating mutants, these hybrids of man and animal, causing people to go insane, including our own protagonist, it seems. It is a unique top-down perspective where you can only see what's in front of you, and the rest of the world behind you is just a blurry background. It is terrifying, the resource management is wonderful, and the story that you can put together is extremely detailed, with every little bit basically being able to be solved. Devil Daggers is a small game where you just happen to find a dagger and have to shoot the hordes of hell until you die. It's a simple, fun game about trying to survive as long as possible. Deep Rock Galactic is a co-op game where you play as dwarves working for a mining space company, trying to go ahead and do what they ask you. From dealing with aliens as you try to go ahead and extract eggs and oil, to dealing with a rival company that's using robots instead of workers. It is unironically my favorite game of all time, and literally changed my stance on what I think of PvP games. That being, I think we need a lot less PvP games. Pigface is a game where you play as a woman named Exit who now has a bomb put into her head by an evil gang. She herself was once part of another gang, and you now, because you have a bomb on your head that you could have detonate at any moment if you disobey them, must do the missions that they give you. It's fun, I love the environmental storytelling, I love the enemies and their voice lines, and overall I cannot wait to see this game get finished. Signalis, a game I mentioned earlier, has you playing as a robot called an Elster unit, inside of a world that is a very, very different take on history. In this version of history, humanity managed to conquer the stars. Society is much more matriarchy-based, with the thing of instead of a stay-at-home wife, this world it's more stay-at-home husbands. The game itself delves into many themes: cosmic horror, unknown terrors that would melt the human mind, robots made from human brains, and those human brains having memories that poke through for just a moment, a story about love and when you should let go of that love. And the story itself is so complicated that all these years later, the only people who know what's going on is the 2 German
developers.
Yume Nikki is a small game made by one random guy in Japan, which is about you playing as a woman, just exploring dreams. The game has no goal. There is an ending, but kind of, when you play the game like I did and you got the ending for the first time, you probably audibly gasped. It is a game just about exploring and having fun. There is no goal, just go ahead and see what you can find out there. What do I mention next? Because I actually have a lot in my library. Blood West is a game made by New Blood. Trust me, if I could, I would mention every single New Blood game in this video, but I don't want it to just be one big sucking off the New Blood company video. In Blood West, we play as a cowboy who has been given the gift of immortality, along with seemingly everybody else in this land. There's some sort of curse going on, presumably caused by white people invading native land, and we must try to figure out what we can do to escape. The game is all about finding hidden weapons and upgrades and trying to basically build a loadout as you play and deal with the weird and terrifying threats of these levels. If I were to go into depth about all these games, this video would probably be 5 hours, and the last 2 big projects were 5 hours, so let's go ahead and not do that. But out of all these games, there's one that stuck with me for a long time. It's really stuck with me in a way that's hard to explain, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the final game on the list. That which gave chase is a small indie horror game made by one developer, and it has stuck with me ever since I played it. The story is never explicitly stated, you have to put it together yourself, but from what we can gather, we're at some point in the 18th century helping a scientist or researcher explore the Arctic, or at least some icy area. And we're with sled dogs here to pull us and him across this place. From the intro, we find out that we were kind of unexpectedly brought here, like it was a last-minute emergency that got us over here. And we find out that this isn't his first time here, but he was here before with another crew. And while they were here, they noticed that there were deer here, and that these deer were strange. They noticed that the deer were always able to find their way back to their homes. And it was strange, because even when the weather was foggy, or they had been completely thrown off their path, they would just find their way home like it was second nature. This being the 18th century, and not giving a crap about animal rights, they would do things to the deer to see if they could still find their way home. They'd cut out their eyes. Maybe they could see their way home. Nope, they were able to get there with no sight. Maybe they can hear the tremors of their brother's feet, so they cut out a deer's ears. It could still find its way home. Maybe it can taste something in the air, cut out its tongue. Still found its way home. But they also noticed that the deer were eating a fungus that would grow here. This fungus was able to survive the temperatures, and it's what the deer lived on. So the people here began to eat the fungus. It may not be the deer guiding them, but another force. A force that is seemingly keeping people here trapped in maybe their own minds? It's hard to tell. The game is out of order, and at first you think maybe it's just for a narrative reason, but as we keep going, it starts to seem like everything's out of order because that's exactly how we're experiencing it. These mushrooms, whatever's connected to them, is seemingly trying to mess with us, to make us see the past, present, and future all at once. And it seems like the researcher who's trapped here, somehow, in some way, maybe even through the mushrooms, was able to contact us, and we came to help them. In a state of delirium, he seemingly is trying to kill us and sacrifice us to appease whatever is causing all of this. Is it even real? Are we just tripping on mushrooms, quite literally? Has this entire game been out of order? Are we experiencing it in the way our character's experiencing it? How long have we been here? Has it been a few days? A few weeks? Have we lived here? Where are we? When are we? The notes date back to the 1800s, but have we been stuck here for maybe years? Living on the mushrooms or whatever this force is keeping us alive for its own entertainment? What is this force and why is it using the deer? Why did the deer and this weird force seem to go together hand in hand, but when people try to join, it just falls apart? Is this a story of a man versus nature or a man versus a god? Is it even a god? Is it just a being? Is it just a concept? Is it the Arctic itself? Is it And just like that, the story ends. There's no explanation behind what you see in this game, and I like that. It leaves it up to you to decide what you think is really going on. And I love that. The games I have mentioned in this video have generally been some of the best video games I've ever played. Their gameplay, their story, their mystery, it's some of the best shit I've played in recent memory. And the games are able to have these stories and have this gameplay and have these mysteries because they're focusing on that specifically. They aren't focusing on rendering everything, on being realistic. They're just focusing on being fun. And that's really, really getting rare to find in most video games nowadays. It seems like most video game companies are obsessed with just trying to make everything realistic, to try to make everything as detailed as humanly possible, to have these insanely well-designed cutscenes and characters and over-the-top dramatic animations when all they need to do is make their game worth playing. But they don't focus on this and put so much budget and effort into the graphics that these games cost $90. Now, look, I need to make it apparent, if it wasn't already obvious just by the existence of things like Resident Evil Requiem, not all games that aim for realism are bad. I feel like that should be pretty obvious. However, I don't think $90 games should be the norm. Resident Evil Requiem is a game I'd argue is kind of worth its price. It's got engaging gameplay, and it manages to do the two genres that Resident Evil has done so well in one game: survival horror and action horror, both perfectly merged into two different stories that merge into themselves. Or for example, Outlast Trials, a great PvE co-op horror game set in an insane asylum with some extremely deranged and, although terrifying, kind of funny characters. Or Killing Floor 2, a, although kind of abandoned PvE co-op horror game, is amazing with its gameplay loop, its maps, and the combat is just amazing and so much fun. However, these developers actually balanced looking good along with good gameplay. Too many developers are not finding that balance. So here we are with what we have now. $80 to $90 games with no real gameplay to be had. All because they put everything into designing their game's looks. This video I've been wanting to make for a while because this is a subject I've had in the back of my mind for fucking years now. And what funnily enough triggered it was a quote from my favorite YouTuber Nitro Rad when talking about the game Corn Kids 64.
And, you know, I'm kind of bored of games looking like real life at this point already. It's like I miss when games looked like video games. What's wrong with that?
I know retro graphics are often kind of made fun of because everyone's doing it, and because, oh, you're just trying to get nostalgia out of people. But to me, I don't view it as that, but simply just game devs making it to where they can make what they want to make. Imagine if OVERKILL was trying to render every single thing or be hyper-realistic. That game would probably suck. What I'm trying to get at, to make a long story short, is I want video games to look like video games again. Not only because it's easier to run on older hardware because people my age are a bit more focused on keeping a roof above our head than buying a new PC every year. Not only because it allows artistic vision to shine through the creators in the way that they design their world. Not only because it allows them to focus on the gameplay and focus on making a game that is fun, and not only because most of them are sold for cheaper because the time and production to make them is often cheaper, but because I want ripples to go through the AAA scene. I want AAA dev studios to look at these games and try to figure out, why is their new realistic hyper shooter not selling well when this is? Because if AAA devs can understand the concept of designing a game to be fun to play, then we're going to start seeing some good games again. And I feel like one of the first big steps when it comes to most of these studios is to ask the question, do graphics even matter?
stars are dancing heel and toe. Turn me capsules here, I guess in this trip I guess. And if I do, I ask that you won't refuse my last request. It seems so low that I could not say no, and it says what the store. The curtain cold, it's got right hold, I'm still clean through to the bone. It ain't been there, it's my awful dread of the icy grave of the pain. So I want you to swear that foul affair, you'll cremate my last remains. Foul last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail. Started on at the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. Crashed on the sleigh and it rained all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, the course was all that was left of Sam McGee. Planks tore from the cabin floor and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found and was lying around, and I heaved the fuel higher. The flames restored and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal and I stuffed in Sam McGee. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear. Stars came out and the dance about her again. I ventured near, sick with dread, but bravely I said I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked and it's time I looked. Then the door I opened wide, and there stood Sam looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace room. He wore a smile you could see for a mile. He said, please close that door. It's fine here, but I really feel it in the cold and storm. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've worn. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time